On today's World Insight, China pushes for a World AI Cooperation Organization at the 2025 World AI Conference in Shanghai, as top scholars see the need for AI safety institutions working toward the tech's benevolent use. That's as the U.S. administration puts in place an action plan seeking to dominate the so-called global AI race.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Chinese Premier Li Qiang addressed on Saturday the opening ceremony of the 2025 World AI Conference and high-level meeting on global AI governance in Shanghai. Here are some highlights.
Currently, global AI governance remains fragmented, with significant differences in regulatory approaches and rules among nations. We must enhance coordination to establish a widely accepted framework for AI governance as soon as possible.
The Chinese premier also said that the Chinese government is seeking the creation of a global AI cooperation organization, and the conference came up with an action plan for global AI governance. With this year's theme, Global Solidarity in the AI Era, representatives from over 40 countries and international organizations gathered to take up issues on innovation cooperation, inclusive development, and collaborative governance. Nobel laureate and AI pioneer Geoffrey Hinton had pitched the establishment of an international community of AI safety institutes and associations that works on techniques for training AI to be benevolent. Meanwhile, last week, the U.S. President Donald Trump signed executive orders to put in motion what he called the AI Action Plan to double down on U.S. advances in artificial intelligence, whatever it takes, according to the action plan. He took to lose regulations and to expand energy supplies for data centers. So, what do the different AI action plan mean for global AI governance? How could competition and cooperation among major powers be effected? On these and more, let's talk to our rich panel. I'm joined in Beijing, Zeng Yi, professor of AI at Chinese Academy of Sciences, member of the United Nations Advisory Body in AI. In Shenzhen, Xiao Shanliu, director of the Embodied AI at Shenzhen Institute of Artificial Intelligence and Robotics of Society. In New York, Max Wolf, CEO of Systematic Ventures. In Beijing, again, Amar Yunus, AI governance, tech law, and compliance advisor. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Well, there are so many things to cover. In fact, starting from winning the AI race, America's AI action plan, to you, Mr. Wolf, what is the real essence of this plan?
Well, I mean, as in many things, the administration presently in power seems to see a zero-sum game in all things. But I think the sort of story of AI is a story of international cooperation, and the future of AI will be too. If we curtail the international exchange of ideas and scientific labors, we'll simply get a fractured, slower development, with some countries kind of being dominant in some areas and other countries dominant in other areas. I do think we'll see a heavy role for the US, but I think we'll see a large and rising role in China. And I also think the European Union has gotten much more serious about generating innovation in and of the European continent.
This plan somehow provides clarity, but also signals a competitive posture. Many are watching closely to see whether US leadership will encourage inclusive governance or reinforce a fragmented, power-centered model of AI development. I think there is a growing interest in cooperation framework that are not tied to geopolitical alignment.
Mr. Liu, now, we have seen over the weekend there is a big conference also being held in Shanghai, WAIC, World AI Conference, in which Eric Schmidt, for example, who sang the song of China being the biggest competitor against the United States in AI, this time focusing once and again on a keyword, cooperation. Now, how do you see the apparent divide of a government policies such as AI action plan and the apparent industry's call, or at least from Mr. Schmidt, calling for, quote, cooperation between China and the United States?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question. When you can win, you say everybody else is rivalry. But then now you cannot win, then everybody else is a partner. I think that's a strategic pivot from the US side. Before, it was focusing on multilateralism and safety-centric governance. Now it's focusing on innovation on the hope to compete head-to-head and neck-and-neck with China, given that China has made a tremendous progress in AI in recent years.
So what I see is that other than the potential competition, to actually mutually and collectively make AI safe and secure is the common interest from not only these two countries, but actually they will have a negative side effect to each and every of the countries if the technology from China and the United States is not safe and secure. So again, as you can see at the World AI conference, actually cooperation is the core. And again, I'm calling for at least for AI cooperation in the space of safety and security.
And Mr. Yunus, how are other players, including Europe, Middle East, Asia, some of the economies are focusing very much also on AI-related industries. How are they articulate all the latest development?
I think that the divergence creates challenges for alignment because countries are culturally diverse. And this is a time I'm talking about artificial intelligence. They don't just want to take sides or join hands with anyone. They want their voices to be heard. So to complement each other and to see that who is supporting this idea of complementing and having their voice heard matters a lot.
If you look at the AI action plan, Mr. Wolf, it's 3 pillars, according to the paper, interpretation, in fact, of the federal deregulation and development framework, and also enabling securing the necessary infrastructure in public and private sectors to support AI adoption. And third, lay out a multi-pronged strategy to secure U.S. leadership in global AI. Now, document is one thing, how it's being implemented is another thing, and what is the international environment for whatever the decision has been in one government is certainly another area to interpret. So how do you see these 3 factors putting together? Is this AI action plan really helping industries to reach out and maintain the U.S. Leadership, as some argue? Or this is already a train that has left the station. In other words, competition is up no matter what the regulation is.
The way I see this is that we have a reputation, Americans around the world, for a very bad habit. And it's begun to show up in our international documentation. And that bad habit is the idea that you say something to the world, which is what you want. You expect them to agree with you because you'd like them to. And if they don't, you say it again and louder and louder and louder, making no accommodation and no adjustment. This only really works mostly to annoy people, and I've never seen it as an effective communication strategy. So what I think you have here is the attempt to have some real international framework, which is good, which we need, couched in this sort of weird political declaration of supremacy, which runs at counter purposes to the idea of an international framework. Because international frameworks will not be accepted to the extent that they are advertised or pushed to guarantee the United States stays in charge. True of the global trade framework, true of the EU framework, true of space, true of a number of issues. So I think if we can sort of get the declaration as a bluster and then actually dig into it, this could be quite useful. But I think the world isn't so much interested in American supremacy as they are a functional architecture to build a safe future. I think America is interested in the same thing broadly. So hopefully the common interest trumps this relatively divisive political posturing.
Mr. Zeng, as an observer, you see Europe, not only China, but also Europe, trying to be more independent in terms of the AI technologies, such as claimed by the French President Macron earlier. Of course, how things are changing is very interesting because on Monday morning, we heard the latest news, the US and EU reached a trade deal suggesting a certain kind of commitment toward one another. During the press between the U.S. President and the EU Council Chairwoman, there was also talks about how technology-related exports would likely to be handled, including related to AI. So, Mr. Zeng, this is a very complicated matter. Technology is not just technology itself. It's also related to so many different issues. How do you see, as a result, this action plan vis-a-vis all the other factors?
What I see is that there is similar situations that both United States and China, and also I think this is also true for the European Union, that everybody wanted to keep good track of the development. So the challenge and the application opportunities. So the challenge are pretty much the same. Well, the way that you solve that kind of problems is very different. As I said, if China is looking at the third or the fourth place and you don't collaborate, and then you never get an opportunity for development. If you restrict other countries, like what the United States government is doing to China, and now you see that DeepSeek and Minimax is using a very different approach, not the big data, not the high energy compute, is that they're changing their pathway for scientific development. They have a second thought. They have a new idea of the scientific breakthrough that they may go on their own way. So what I see is really that if we promote collaboration, the world is big enough to share the benefits, to share the opportunities not only for developing AI in different versions, in different pathways, but also the world is big enough to have everyone being on board for different application opportunities for a shared future.
Earlier, we have seen very clearly debates about the open source or vice versa. Now, we have seen in all countries, for example, in China and the United States, there are open source, there are closed source, but China more focused on open source as a result of earlier U.S. policy toward China, and certainly create opportunities for all the other followers and players to take great advantage of what is available. On the other hand, there was a scaling law that the industry in the U.S. mainly talked about, starting from OpenAI, and now certainly open source has become such a trend. So do you see, as a result of the action plan, industries might have very different options in terms of open source, closed source, or are we going to see very same path being traversed as earlier? Mr. Wolf.
Yeah, I do think we'll see that the kind of emerging players in the space will push open source because there is a pathway dependence on mass utilization. In other words, you need to get a very large number of users to begin to bend the system and learn how it's used. And as in all things with the social element, the sort of user is the product to some extent. And so even in the US, when you want to play catch up to user base, having a more open source approach helps. I also think that a more open source approach might become very important as we see some of the employment and social disruptions associated with AI, where there'll need to be some sense of accountability of a playing field so that the public doesn't feel that they're being victims of mass disinformation or job replacement without some perception of a gain, right? Because there has to be a social sense that AI is beneficial to folks other than the commanding heights of industry.
Indeed. But what is likely to be more open source and what is likely not necessarily so? Mr. Wolf, I know you are in the industry in the US. Sure. What is the debate and discussion current stage?
Yeah, so as soon as you want to start charging enterprise coupon tickets a large amount of money, and or you start to become a core utilization piece for defense or intelligence agencies, open source architecture begins to make people relatively nervous. 1, 2. The other thing is open source tends to encourage heavy informational sharing as you're trying to enrich your data, and control of that data, if it's enterprise or corporate value data, or if it's intelligence or military data, really reveals some pretty serious issues. And the last piece is that if you're going to be making policy decisions or potentially lethal decisions, hallucination issues are extremely non-trivial. So that people have a tendency to want to hide what they're doing or at least enclose it and keep it from general understanding.
Yeah. Mr. Liu, what about that discussion in China?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question because if we step back and look at the landscape, competition landscape today, both the US and China try to win the rest of the world. It's a huge market. China consists of about 25% of the world technology market, but the rest of the world is 75%. By having something open source, it's easier to penetrate into the rest of the market and make it into a standard. That's why you see the DeepSeek movement. That's why the DeepSeek movement kind of threatens the US technology stack. And now they are pushing for open source as well. So I think the key competition point is still to win the rest of the market. And that relates to other question as well. What's the global standard? How do we make sure that every other country can participate into the game? But open source is the very first step towards that.
There has been industry prediction, quote unquote, 3 to 4 years that AI will be able to have the kind of power and the intelligence beyond what we can imagine today and beyond human being capacities. Over the weekend at WAIC conference, we also heard from a Turing Award winner, Mr. Hinton, talking about that so-called scaring animal. Mr. Zeng, your take on that, as a result of that, how much space of cooperation, if there is, would that provide China, US, and others?
So right there, actually, Jeffrey was mentioning that we shouldn't actually promote AGI, and we cannot actually prevent its happening because everybody was chasing on that. Well, on the other side, what he suggests is that you don't share how you make your AI smart, but you actually share how to make it a lot safer and a lot ethical. Well, I cannot say 100% that I agree with him, because I think the wisdom of intelligence is actually very related to morality and ethics. Well, on the other side, I also agree that generality is related to capacities of AI, but on the other side, we need to build the safety, the safeguard in advance, so that we're getting more prepared for potential catastrophic risks. We don't know when AGI is going to actually happening, but we're quite sure that we haven't found the solution to make AGI safe and secure. So later is too late.
Without knowing exactly what is going to be the logic of AGI and how fast the things could develop, things might change because logic might change as a result of innovation stages. So, Mr. Liu, without knowing that, how much, once again, coming back to our topic, cooperation is possible there without knowing the future of AGI logic? How can China and United States work together? That would be a question I would love to hear from you.
Well, healthy competition is always good for the rest of the world. You don't want one system to dominate the whole market. That's why in the US, for example, in the operating system space, you have Microsoft, you have Apple. In the search space, you have Google, you have Bing. So healthy competition is always good. Now we are at the very beginning of the AI market, and most of the world are not enjoying the benefit of it yet because the lack of market access. But then in the next 5 to 10 years, I think there will be a lot of competition if US and China open up the technology to each other through open sourcing, through sharing technology. We will see the progress much more advanced compared to today, and that's one thing. The second thing is that as you tap into a new market, there will be new use cases as well. Those are feedbacks to your technology. As you get more feedbacks from the market, you will refine your technology more rapidly. So that's my take.
Mr. Wu, tell me more about your thoughts here.
So not only about US and China, I think that all the countries consider it a matter of concern. US and China both have been seen as promoting global dialogue and think that it is important. But cooperation, I think that must go beyond showcasing leadership, or it must include some sort of shared governance design, which should be inclusive in terms of standard setting, And a very important thing is that it should support regional voices, particularly from underrepresented regions. For many countries, the test of cooperation or securing themselves from the threat of AGI is whether their concerns are being addressed or not, or these bigger players are taking their voices seriously or not.
Over the weekend, China released a global action plan for AI and also calling on the establishment. In fact, the Chinese premier, he talked about himself. China proposed the establishment of a global AI cooperation organization. That is according to the official readout by the Chinese side. So is the time ripe for that, Mr. Wolf?
I think it is, because I also think we're entering a new phase. I think the humanoid robotic world is going to generate just an overwhelming amount of richer data. You think about the way human children learn, it's not perfect analogy, but if you think about how much of what you've learned as a human being, or I, or your children, particularly if you have children, how much of what they learn is textual versus sensory, then robotics are going to flood the market with a different set of sensory learnings and knowledges, which are going to be very rich, and they're going to change our path. And there, the United States will be more interested, I think, in international cooperation, because it's not a story of American leadership. And that flood of data coming in is going to be transformative, whether that's at-home robots, whether that's industrial robotics, whether that's medical robotics. There's just going to be a flood of data, probably larger than all the data we've worked with so far, at an accelerating rate. So I think it's good to remember we're still kind of groping around in the primordial ooze here. We haven't really evolved out of the ocean. We haven't evolved very far in terms of this business.
If the U.S. want to cooperate, for example, about data, which is well understood, that there are many other populations in the world. But why would others cooperate with the U.S. if the U.S. is not willing to share the best part that the others are willing to work with the U.S.?
The opportunities, not only for China, but also for the United States and the rest of the world, is related to AI sovereignty. Just now, you've been introducing the World AI Cooperation Organization proposed by the Chinese government. What I see is two opportunities for collaboration. One is that both China and the United States, as two most powerful countries in AI infrastructure, to help other countries to build their AI, their own AI. They're not only using Chinese or the United or the American AI. They're using this infrastructure to protect their data and AI sovereignty. They create the AIs with their own culture. So we are helpers. We're not only service providers. We help them to build theirs. So this is very important. Well, on the other side, it's about how can we collaborate on safety and security. So guess who is the number one and number two from exposure of risks of AI? I'm not talking about development. Again, United States and China being the first and the second to expose more risks of AI to all over the world. So what I see is that how can we collaborate on safety and security? Sharing of these best practices on how you solve these risks from the United States and from China. This is internal needs, not only for the US and China, but also the world needs not to make the safety and security threats happening again and again in different places. We don't have to do that.
Mr. Liu, do you see at least an entry point of cooperation between China and the US on AI security, AI global governance at all at this stage?
Well, in terms of AI technology, I see a tremendous potential. For example, in robotics, China is very good at hardware, very good at supply chain, very good at use cases. And the US is very good at computing and model. If we collaborate, we can soon develop very good products to sell to the world. So that's on the technology side. On security side, on safety side, I think it's standard-driven, best practice-driven. As Professor Zheng just mentioned, I think if both sides can share their best practices and push for international standard, I think that's the best way forward.
But it seems that the interpretation of the U.S. action plan, AI action plan, is advocating the U.S. supremacy in the standard setting and also in technology advancement, Mr. Liu?
Yeah, I think they're in a dilemma, as we have discussed before. If you read through the document, it's very contradictory. On one side, they say, oh, let's do open source so that we can adopt technology more quickly, so that technology can penetrate into society very quickly. On the other side, they say, let's put export control on advanced technology so that the adversaries cannot leverage those technologies. I think they're contradictory. So on one hand, they're trying to win the rest of the world, win the market, let the US standard become the gold standard. But on the other hand, they're afraid that China would catch up so fast that surpass the US capability. So they want to put restrictions, export controls on technology.
Can you use maybe just 2 or 3 sentences to suggest to us how to create the best scenario and to avoid at least the worst scenario in this case? Let's start from Mr. Liu.
I think the best case scenario is if we could have a healthy cooperation between US and China, the 2 leading systems right now, then at least the world would have a choice which system they want to use, and they can choose to use either one, as opposed to one system dominates the world. I don't think that's a healthy model. The worst case scenario to me is that everybody's building their stuff in-house and not sharing.
Mr. Wolf, the best scenario, the worst scenario to you?
I think the best scenario is to have an AI for peace and security global cooperation framework, because let's remember that AI is also the future of weapon systems and surveillance systems. So AI is very quickly going to become front and center in debates about colonial impulses and aggressive stances between countries and relationships between citizens and government. So it gives us a framework to talk about this as a technology that is both peaceful, but also potentially military. And so give us a central kind of set of rules and rules of engagement here so that we don't see runaway winner-take-all proliferation of this technology for civilian or military. So I think that's kind of front and center.
Mr. Yunus?
Yes, I think that the worst case scenarios, what we can imagine is the more trust deficit among these major powers, and also the asymmetries in technical capacities that this global AI race kind of thing. And also the most important risk, I think, is the risk of excluding the voices of smaller countries from agenda settings. There is a need to develop more and more interoperable ethical frameworks, which should be by a regulatory capacity building of all the stakeholders involved. And most importantly, a strive to enable normative dialogues across legal cultures. I think that would be the best case scenario.
Professor Zheng, last but not least.
So the worst case is that we don't really need AGI to create catastrophic risks for humans. It's only the current AI they create risks that we cannot expect in a very expected time and way. So later, as I said, later is too late. We must use a very scientific and engineering sound way to protect ourselves, to enumerate all the potential risks and to solve these risks altogether. This is for the worst case. And the best, and I think the ideal way is that for future AIs, we're not only going for data and compute driven AI. We need to try multiple ways to make AI much better and good and also safe.
Well, thank you so much for the 4 of you. It's really a rich conversation. I would love to continue our discussion in the future when appropriate topics arrive. Appreciated Zheng Yi, Shaoshan Liu, Max Wolf, Amar Unas. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight. Check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on X and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of the team. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now. I'll see you tomorrow.